Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and we're going to do a quick and targeted webinar today on table use and formatting in APA style. Because this is on a holiday weekend, we're going to be concise, we're going to be focused, we're going to skip past most of the normal stuff, and we'll talk about table formatting. Now, table formatting is something that people often have a lot of questions about, and I often have people write in asking, saying, where are the rules? And it's very simple because although you can see the very detailed step-by-step breakdown in the APA manual, they actually have a relatively concise version of the rules here on the APA style website, which is completely free to access. Now, I'm actually going to recommend that you don't go there. I'm going to recommend that you go to this page, the sample tables, to look at some examples, because if you open this up, you will find that there is a set of visual examples that will give you an idea of what a table is supposed to look like in APA style, and that will allow you to approach formatting in Microsoft Word with a good imprint of how things are supposed to be. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So you should now be seeing my web browser, and I've got APA style pulled up here. And just to be clear, if you went to apastyle.apa.org and opened up their style and grammar guidelines, scroll down to tables and figures, there's a set of instructions about just those things. The instructions that I suggested don't look at, this breaks it down in, I would say, exhaustive detail, which is usually not what you need. Now, maybe if you have a lot of tables that you're trying to polish up for, say, a dissertation, you might want to explore some of these possibilities for customizing it. But for the most part, people just need this look. Okay, this is how a table is supposed to look. And maybe looking at this terminology if you're talking with other people about tables and want to be able to refer to those specific things. But in practice, if we go to this sample tables page here, and you can pick any one of these tables here and take a look at. So here, if we scroll out just a little bit, you can see this complete table here. Now, we have the table label here with the number, table 1. You can see that's bolded. We have the table title, that's sociodemographic characteristics of participants at baseline. You can see that is italicized and in title case. And then for the table itself, you see that this is called the header row, which has its two parts here. But the header row has a line above it and below. And to separate these two parts here, there's another line going across for that part to show that these are labels for these things, breaking down the number of items and the percentage that represents. And same thing for each of the columns. But besides that, the only other horizontal line that you see is right here at the very bottom of the table. And there are no vertical lines at all. And that is essentially how a table should look in APA style. Every column should be labeled. So that's why this column is labeled baseline characteristic. This pair is guided self-help, number and percentage within it. Unguided self-help, number and percentage. Waitlist control, number and percentage. Full sample, meaning the total of all of these things here. And, then we have the number and percentage for that. Now, you can see that it is possible to have an explanatory note here where we have that little A that cues us into an explanatory note here with the A at the bottom, and a general note for the table here, like saying, oh, there were 150 people total in the study, and things like the SD that doesn't really fit within the rest of the table here, but might be handy to have around. We can also look at this other more concise table, table 2, and you'll see that it has the label, table 2. So those are just numbered sequentially in the order they appear in your documents. The first table is table 1, the second is table 2. And then we have the table title, results of curve fitting analysis examining the time course of fixations to the target. That is rendered in title case and italicized. And here, because these columns are broken down, we have this little subbar here. But other than that, it's one horizontal line there, one horizontal line there, and a third here. And then the note if you have something that you want to explain. Now here, we have a table that does not have that subdivision of the header row, which is fine. And you can see that we have, each of these, the content is centered within the row. And for something that there's no content to these things here, you just have a dash there, a dash to mark the last end to show, oh yeah, there's not supposed to be something after it. And we can look at a couple other tables, but it's much the same thing. Again, no vertical lines and only horizontal lines delineating the header row and the bottom of the table. And here's another example that has text. Now, the question of whether this should be centered or whether it should be left aligned, it kind of depends on the content. There are some things where it'll be more readable if you have it left aligned, but just be consistent about the formatting. Okay, with that, so the assignment that we were originally going to be looking at was from HCAD 601, but I realized before this webinar that the assignment has actually been updated in this course. And so this particular assignment, which called for creating a table or grid to illustrate values, is not actually in that course in its current version. Now, there is a updated version, an updated assignment here that does ask you to create an infographic. And if that's something that you're specifically interested in, well, if you go to our webinars page here and search for infographic, you'll find that we have actually a webinar about just that, infographics in APA style, which walks you through how to create infographics in more detail. All right. But our purpose here, there is actually, if you are enrolled in the HCAD program, or if you're in some other program where you're having to do tables, we have in HCAD 627, the week 6 assignment 1 for evaluating new technology. That course does in fact have some information that you will be, we'll say, compiling, and that to make sense of that, you might be using tables or diagrams or other formats of information. And a common place where questions like this come up, something like HCAD 691, where you are doing something like a SWOT analysis. Say, okay, well, that is clearly in table format, this matrix. How would you make that APA compliant table? So let's start with that as a task, and then we'll talk about some more of the why, where, withers. But as part of our hands-on, we want to show you how to create a table in APA style in our template and have it look and feel correct. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a blank copy of our APA course paper template here. And if you're creating a table, you want to do a couple things. First, any table that appears in the body of your document should be referred to in the text. So, well, okay, let's go ahead and we will start a paragraph. And let's say this info is summarized in table 1. And then you can have that a period or a colon, but I recommend a period because that's a complete note. And then if we are doing table 1, we need a title for it. And here, this should be bolded, and this should be italicized, and in title case, where we are, among other things, capitalizing any word with 4 or more letters. All right, so once we have that, we're going to create a table, and you can just go ahead and use a number of different pathways here. You could go to Insert Table, you could use a drop-down menu, table. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create something here. And because it's handy, we're going to go ahead and use this to create a 3x3 table. Now, by default, a table in Word will have these borders around it. And let's hold off on talking about the borders until we have some information in it. So just looking at the labels here, helpful to objective, harmful to objective, weaknesses, threats, opportunities, and strengths. So those are the core elements of a SWOT table, and we also need the labels for here. So origin, be internal or external. Now, because of the nature of this table here, we might do some reformatting for which has the most space, because we don't need all this space just for the label internal, external, but we're listing strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. We probably want some more space. We'll get to that. All right, so first off, what are we going to put here? Well, we want to distinguish that we have some strengths here. So if you're listing some things here, a great strategy is after this first item to have things be bulleted and indented, or just indented, depending on the exact number and how much space you have. So we can go ahead and create a list here. And let's say that we are going ahead and we are going to list worldwide reputation, focus on patient care, focus on quality and value, experience in medical imaging. If you're curious, I'm just copying things out of the reading for the HCAD 691 course. And then we'll talk about how to format that ideally. Location of hospital, high-tech facility and equipment, no capital expenditures. Now, something you'll notice here is that we actually have a lot of white space here. And here, we have some things that are spilling onto second lines. So, we want to make an efficient use of space. Let's keep an eye on that. And we see here, okay, yes, one of the reasons you would want to add some formatting here is that if you have no indentation, no bullets, it blends together. It's harder to see that weaknesses is actually the label. So we do want some sort of formatting there. We'll start with the bullets and see where we go. And here we're going to go ahead and add a couple more. And here we'll go ahead and add some more. Of course, do make sure to proofread and run spell check. All right, and we look at it and say, okay, yes, we do want to have some formatting to distinguish those. Yeah, that we have a whole lot of white space on the sides there, so that's not ideal. And we can even go ahead and look at, okay, we have all the data in the table and a whole lot of white space here. So a great way to optimize this table is to click this button in the upper left-hand corner that selects the whole table. And then if you go to layout, you can select auto fit. And so this will make its best attempt at spacing things out based on what you actually have in the columns. So this is why you want to do it at the end. And we'll do auto fit contents. And, that spacing isn't that bad. I think if we just drag this over a little bit, it looks a little bit neater. And that's a fine use of the space. Table is much easier. All right. Again, go ahead and select the whole table. And now if we go to table design here, you have a couple options for how to do this. One is you could use this borders button here to turn off the different borders. Say, oh, no left, no right, no inside. And then we'd go ahead and select the top row, select that, and turn on a bottom row. So that's one way to do it. Now I'm going to undo that and show you the other way. So we've got the whole table selected now by clicking on that button there. And you can right click or control click on the Mac and go to borders and shading. And there I'd recommend first hitting none to turn off all the borders, then turn on top and bottom. Okay. Select just that top row, right click or control click on a Mac, select borders and shading again. And this time, because we just have that top row selected, click on bottom border, and ta-da, we have our rows. Now, just for readability, you might add a space like that, and that does give a certain visual clarity to it. But as you can see here, we've covered how to reference a table in the text. You could also have it say, in parentheses, see table 1. And have that be in a parenthetical note as well. And then you just have the table come after it's been mentioned in the body of the text, and then a new paragraph will start after that. So now the question about the bullets and the spacing. Well, this is actually fairly concise. This is maybe half a page's worth of space here. You are actually allowed to decrease the font size here. So let's just look at how it looks there. I don't think we're really gaining a lot here from shrinking it. You can actually go down as low as 8-point font, but I think it's more helpful to us when it's at a more readable size. So something you can also do is change the spacing here. So we could drag one or both of these and then create this more compact setup here. And you just want to make sure that you do that on all of them so that it is consistent. So here I can relocate the bullets, relocate the text, and see, oh, well, that all fits on one line now. So here I can do the same thing. And just make sure that you line those up as you do it. And here we are. So what might make this look even more readable? Well, if we just add an extra space there. So now we have the clean, oh, yes, we see that is one row. Yes, we see that as one row. So little things like that help the readability, especially if you're preparing it for publication. But do you need those? No, it just happens to make it more readable with very little time or trouble. So if you're preparing something for a presentation, it's good to spend that extra little bit of time to polish things up. Okay, now let's go back to looking at some of the examples because we've covered the basics now for formatting a table in APA style. And if we go ahead now and look at those sample tables again, we see that there's various formatting that's being used for the text. You can see some minor indentation here to show these different levels. Same philosophy as what you saw us doing with those bullets. Same thing where the level of indentation is showing us what level this is within the column. And if we were to now go ahead and look at those table rules, you'd see that we have, hold on just a moment. You'd see that we have now a basis for looking at this and seeing, okay, in general, you will only have vertical lines at the top, the bottom, and underneath the heading row. But if we have a two-part header row, you might have a line there. And here, when there are subtotals, because you have what these called table spanner subheadings within it, yes, there is some provision for doing extra horizontal lines. But that is kind of more the exception. There are particular cases like here where they're comparing these two groups, wave 1 and wave 2. For the most part, you're not going to have internal horizontal lines here. Now, there are more rules here that you can certainly look at later, but for the most part, if you eyeball these examples here and you eyeball the table that you create, you'll be good. So there you have it. I promised you a very concise, focused webinar on this topic. And so you can look up on the APA Style website for additional information. You can grab our template from this quick link, tinyurl.com/ACU template. And for any questions, you can email us at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. Schedule an appointment by going to my.acu.edu and on the drop-down, selecting Online Writing Center from the list of resources, or visit the Online Writing Center website to grab these, see recordings, and other fun things. With that, I bid you good night and happy weekend.